It's the Planet Traditions channel, presented by Moses.
Hello and welcome to the Planet Traditions channel. My name is Kendra Moses, and as always, we have our resident chef Kai off camera. Time. This is a concept that is basically a keeper to us all. Even though our phones, our watches, our microwaves, stoves, computers, all are basically man-made timekeepers, time still has a way of keeping us. It has a way of dictating to us what we're going to do at any given time and moment. And it's an interesting thing because time is something that seems older than anything that we know about. Time is something that ideally has had to happen even before the galaxy, because ideally time is something that we have at least dictated to ourselves that has to pass. It has to exist in order for anything else to exist. Everything around us takes time to grow and build and expand. So ideally, time seems ironically timeless. We've had our very, very early ancestors looking up in the sky, and they noticed, if nothing else, they noticed our sun and our moon. And they looked at it. And from that point, all types of scientific discoveries happened. But probably one of the most notable ones is the concept of looking up at two bodies in our galaxy, our sun and our moon, and deciding these will be the things that we use to keep time. It sounds like a logical thing to do because those two things were basically a routine thing in our world. We've had too many instances of time and the earth changing, or the time changing the earth. But it's something about knowing that this great ball of light is going to appear to you in the sky at pretty much the same time of day, every day. And then looking at something else and said, this other object, even if it's just a sliver of it, this object will appear in our sky when the sky is black. This noticeable thing. You have something so big and so hot and so luminous that it can be seen in a lit sky, or it's lighting our sky, depending on how you want to look at it. And then you have something that when the sky completely goes dark, there's this one luminous ball that's still up there. And well, they might even question back then, is this the same thing? But then they notice something. They notice that this doesn't do quite the same thing as the sun did. The sun basically stayed as a spherical form throughout the day until it went away somewhere. But this object, this moon, it had a tendency to only show a part of itself. The moon only showed its whole self after a certain amount of transition of day. Find a day back in the time where we weren't just brought up as we are now to say, okay, here you go. This is day, this is night. This is sun, this is moon. This is information that is just common knowledge, but it was not common knowledge. We were thinking about a species that is now supposed to be conscious. And this is not to say that the other renditions of our species wasn't aware, but being that they did not have the level of communication or recorded communication that we have now in this species, it had to be something to have a form of language now, and where you're communicating your feeling and expression about seeing and noticing a lit sky versus a dark one. And this keeps happening at roughly the same time every day, every day, every day. So, and I'm using the word day very loosely because how else do I explain to this generation now, or even to myself, about the transition of time? We have gone as far as calculating into the second, to the minute, to the hour, and then to our day. The people before us had put a lot of time and thought for seeing these two bodies in the sky, to us breaking down time and giving a concept to time, a concept that we are aware of, and then breaking it down to the smallest possible parts. And so we went from seeing two bodies in our sky to thinking about a day, and then breaking that down to hours, and then minutes, and then seconds. And we've been doing this for a very long time throughout the course of our history. And we do this so much that we've even made holidays around it. Because not only do they probably not celebrate the specific holiday or tradition that you're celebrating it, it might not be on the specific date that you're celebrating it on. It doesn't even have anything to do with the day of the week changing because of a numbered date, or the numbered date changing because of the day of the week. This is just because they process the time different. Their calendar is different. The way they calculate time is different. Because with our differing locations, our differing cultures, our differing ways of doing things worldwide, we have different ways of interpreting time. And we have different times a year where things of significance happens. So all of us don't have the same holiday, and all of us may have similar holidays that may mean pretty much the same thing, but they will not be celebrated at the exact same time. Because where the significance of time was for them, it's different for someone else, or for another place. And this is something that's just amazing, because everything about our world and our life shows things constantly moving. Right now, this earth is spinning very fast, very, very fast, even though I look relatively still. And even though everything around you may lay still, we are moving at an incredible rate. In a universe in which not only is our earth spinning, is also rotating around the sun. Everything that we depend on for our lives and livelihood is always in a state of motion. Because whether or not we pay attention to it, it still moves. It never stops. And the way that we interpret time, even though it's different, no matter how we calculate it, time never stops. And so worldwide, there are actually quite a few calendar types. Now, the interesting thing about Plated Traditions to me is that I don't care what you do, even though we've tried to keep certain secular things basically divided for a state of respect. We try to keep certain conflicting ideals separate. But what's amazing to me at this point in time is that the Gregorian calendar is what we use. At least here in the United States and in a lot of different places. A lot of countries use the Gregorian calendar. And the Gregorian calendar was made by a scientific-minded person of the clergy. We focus so much on trying to separate things like our religion from the science base, and we understand why. If you're familiar with either one, you understand why, because it gets to a certain point where it goes down a certain rabbit hole and it's just too much. But at a certain point of time, there were people of faith or people of the cloth or clergymen, however you want to describe them, who looked up at the sky and noticed the same things that any other science-minded person, any philosopher saw. Those things were indisputable. The passing of time has always been indisputable. And so they looked up at the sky. All these minds looked up in the sky, and they still decided to make a rendition of counting the days that we pass as they go by. And it's amazing to me because there was a point where ideals had to come together. And these are the same ideals that we end up using over a large chunk of our world. A world where many of us may not speak the same language, or celebrate the same holidays, or the same traditions, or eat the same foods. But for time, we largely depend on the Gregorian calendar, at least for the acknowledgement of giving a date and noting the progression of time as even we record our history, or what will be history in the future point in time for us. It's interesting. I keep mentioning those two items in the sky because most calendars judge the passing of time by those two things. But even with using those two celestial beings up in the sky, those two celestial forms, we've still over time had different ways of dictating the passing of time. Where we're going to show you a feature film, but it's based primarily off chance. It's literally going to be the roll of the dice. This is what our first roll of the dice came out for us.
All the time, I am immeasurable and immortal as I can't be definitively defined or created. I represent every singular grain of sand that involves your past, present, and future. I recall days and time that you could only philosophize. A time before your very existence as I watch your beloved Gaia develop from a humble rock. As I'm watching your every development as any parent hovering over a child's crib. My sand standing witness to every land. Every body of water. Every moment. Down to every meal and recipe throughout time. Both lost and saved.
Father Time is ever present. How you confer with him is up to you. Spend some time saving the recipes that you hold dear. You can pass something on via the great legend himself. So there you have it. Time is a very powerful thing and is a very consuming thing. It is something that has taken over our species for a many millennia. And it's relevant. And it almost seems like an imperative because we think about our traditions and it always has a timestamp. They can't be one without the other. We can't have other traditions in relation to this time of year without time. They're all so intertwined together and it's very tightly wound. But again, it happens for all of us at different times. Time is ever moving, and even with the painstaking efforts that all those before us have gone through to make it less complicated somehow and to make sure that we're all on the same page, is still, like our traditions, very widely wherever we are. And it's a very interesting thing, and it's a very amazing thing, and it intertwines with everything that we do, and it basically keeps us on task as well, as far as doing things like tending to the land, to make sure we eat, to make sure how we live and how we treat our cultures and how we treat our lifespans based on the essence of time. And I say all this about time because this week is the Chinese New Year. January 29th, even though while widely used in the Gregorian calendar for the New Year, they still held on to their old ancient calendars in celebration for their holidays. And why not? Because it's part of their tradition and it's part of their culture. And in keeping with that culture, they still recognize their Chinese New Year. So I say everything about time because I want to cement what I said before in the Thanksgiving special. It's not for us to decide based on our location, based on our past, our history, our traditions, when it is fit for someone to celebrate something that we feel has already passed. Time is something that it travels along its way, but we all celebrate our traditions at different times. And while they may be similar, New Year's, similar, right? Not enough. And I love the fact that they still hold so tight to their own tradition and their own calendar from their heritage and their lineage, because everyone's calendar has so much time taken into it, and it took so long to come to a consensus just within themselves before they could even begin to think that there's a calendar now where most of the world has taken this information, this research, and taken it under their own wing. And that was the whole ideology about Plated Traditions is about taking, of course, more food-related items than I've mentioned today, but taking things underneath your wing and incorporating it into your own life and the way that you see fit and the way that still holds pride and honor to your tradition and how you decide to celebrate and go for it. So with all of that said, Gong Hei Fat Joy, wishing you prosperity and happiness into your new year. It's the Lunar New Year, still with all the wonder and tradition it brings. Gong Hei Fat Joy. May all your dreams come true. May this Lunar New Year bring you joy, good luck, and prosperity.